Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Amna Gul from the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication. We're back with the course Developments about Communication, bearing the code GMC 413. It's our 15th lecture, and the topic today is Communication Campaigns for Sustainable Development. Communication at all levels is necessary for people to work towards goals of sustainable development. The best way for individuals and or organizations to engage the public in sustainability issues is to extensively research the problems or issues at stake and formulate communication campaigns designed for public awareness and action concerning those problems or issues. Thus, we'll be discussing today what a communication campaign is and how a communication campaign is planned, the process of it. Let's start with what is a communication campaign. Communication campaigns are well-structured and well-planned methods of reaching target audiences with specific messages. These messages are designed to produce specific results. Campaigns to promote sustainable development are as diverse as the different environmental issues and problems in communities of various sizes and cultures. The first step is to identify the environmental problems and issues and agree the situation must be improved or changed. Obviously, there cannot be a change unless there is a decision or there is a feel to have a change. Then a public awareness or action campaign can be launched. A public awareness campaign or action campaign, whatever you call it, can have a far-reaching impact on wide audiences mainly because of the nature of the communication tools. Depending on the communication tools and the communication campaign, the impact can be far-reaching, it can be wide. These tools obviously include both interpersonal communication channels as well as mass media channels. Having said that, the question is, who are these campaigns targeted to? Since communication campaigns can provide people with informational and motivational messages, which can in turn stimulate people to take action in working towards global sustainable development, the community level is a good place to start because it is communities that collectively comprise a nation. It is the citizens or members of a community who best understand the problems inherent to that community in which they live. So they should be included in sustainable development dialogue. Since these citizens have a stake in sustainability outcomes, they are more likely to respond with actions towards situation improvement or a solution if they have had input into the decision-making process. This is very much important because then they own such decisions, then they own that development if they are part of it, if they are taken into account, taken into confidence for the decision-making. We'll now discuss a 10-step campaign. Communication campaigns are most effective when they are carefully planned. So a step-by-step planning process is recommended. We'll just discuss a 10-step planning process for communication campaigns. The first step is to define the problem or the issue. The first thing to do is to define any problems that currently contribute to an unsustainable situation. A problem is defined as the undesired difference between a present unsustainable situation and a future desired sustainable situation. The definition of the problem must be a factual and specific description of the existing undesired situation. A communication campaign usually is designed to deal with just one problem. However, a communication campaign can also address a complex problem by breaking it down into a series of sub-problems. The second step, analyze the problem or issue and then gather information, which we can also call do the research. The problem or issue to be addressed by the campaign should be analyzed from all perspectives. This step involves gathering information and extensively researching the problem or the issue. What we can do is we need to ask Questions such as with whom, where, when, and to what extent does the problem occur. So first to know the details about the problem. Who says there is a problem and for whom is it a problem? So that who calls it a problem and who is affected by that. What are the signs of the problem? What role does human behavior play in connection with the problem? So is it like infrastructure level problem, or is it human behavior related problem? How urgent is the problem? Are there human health risks? What, if any, is the history of the problem? What are the causes of the problem? Does the problem involve human knowledge, attitudes, or behavior? Does the problem violate any accepted laws or policies? At this stage of the campaign process, not only is the problem or issue thoroughly researched, but the audience may also be polled to determine existing knowledge, attitudes, beliefs, and values concerning the problem or issue. At this point, individuals with traditional or local knowledge might also be consulted, because this is the data gathering stage. At this level, if all inputs are taken into account, the better research it is, the better it is, planning, it can result in the better planning. So it is very, very important. Then moving towards third step, to form partnerships, that is to gain support of other interested or concerned individuals or companies or institutions, etc. At this point in the campaign strategy process, it may be valuable to gain the support of others who are also concerned about the problem or the issue. Existing organizations may be willing to donate time or resources, or even both, towards problem solution or towards situation improvement. Individuals who perceive the situation to be a problem might be interested or even willing to contribute. Therefore, some initial or preliminary campaigning might be valuable in obtaining this support. Meetings, public forums, workshops, and other similar gatherings can be used to bring about like-minded people. It is often from these brainstorming sessions that the best campaign ideas emerge. So it is good to form partnerships and obviously gain support to have a more effective campaign. Moving towards step 4, determine campaign goals and objectives. There can be a single goal or single objective. There can be multiple goals or multiple objectives. It can be any of the combination. One goal can have multiple objectives, or there can be multiple objectives as well as multiple goals. It is dependent on the nature of the problem. So once the problem is defined and well researched, a goal can be determined. A goal is a general description of a desired end situation. Objectives must then be determined as means for working towards the desired goal. Objectives determine who should reach, who or what, when, where, and how. The objectives of the campaign should be determined with improvement of the situation or correction of the problem in mind, or both. The objectives must be defined in perceptible and measurable results. The length of time for achieving the objectives must also be indicated. Now, this is very much important that all these things are sorted out. Objectives must be obviously obtainable and therefore should be defined in terms of what the communicators intend for people to do concerning the problem. For example, if a change is desired in behavioral aspects of human nature, the campaign objectives may be written as behavior modification goals. This would involve identifying the behavior it is hoped the audience will enact as a result of the campaign messages. So this is once again very, very important to think about what are the goals and objectives of the campaign and to state those very clearly in measurable terms. Unless it is done properly, it is difficult to, obviously if you do not know the goal, how are you going to achieve it? So it is very important. Step 5, target audience analysis. We'll be discussing this briefly right here, otherwise it's it is in itself a separate topic. In order to make the environmental problem or the issue have relevance to the audience, careful audience targeting should be achieved. The question should be asked, with which segments of the population is there a fair chance of realizing the campaign objectives? For example, if you are working with a geographical location, you need to, or even with a demographic setup, you need to find out which segments of this audience can help you out in realizing the campaign objectives. Sometimes audiences can be determined by asking, for whom is this a problem and who needs to take action to remedy the situation. In response to the main question of who is the target audience, you can consider, for example, who is the final target audience? Is there an intermediate target audience who will take the message to the final target audience? Is there a secondary target audience to whom the initial target audience can take messages? The size of the target audience, demographic and socioeconomic characteristics of the target audience, for example, age, education, family, gender, cultural background, religion, income, welfare, profession, working environment, are these car owners, home or land owners, etc., etc., etc. Then there are psychological characteristics of target audience, for example, their hobbies, interests, and existing knowledge, attitudes, and values concerning environment, etc. Then you need to know the accessibility and traceability of the target audience, size and intensity of the problem for the target group, time needed to achieve the objectives with the target group, costs and best means possible of reaching the target group. So it's a very detailed analysis that I've just covered mildly here. I've just touched it here, otherwise it goes into many details. But once again, unless you know who is the target audience, what are their needs, what is their background, what are their pet characteristics, how do they deal with the situation, what works best for them, unless you know all these kinds of things, you cannot design an effective communication campaign for these particular people. Then there are other factors concerning the target audience. I'll just discuss them briefly. The several factors concerning target audiences should be taken into consideration when preparing communication campaigns. The first one of these factors is the knowledge factor. Basically, what is the audience's level of knowledge, awareness, or insight concerning the problem or the issue? The audience's knowledge level will determine the type of messages that need to be devised. For example, if it is about hygiene, so you need to know how much they know about the importance of hygiene and what is their knowledge about it. Audience knowledge can be determined by survey or questionnaire methods of scientific polling. If personal contact with the target audience is possible, then audience knowledge can also be determined through feedback obtained at public meetings or other events to which the audience is invited. And then the second factor is the attitude factor. That is, what are the audience's interests in feelings or opinions about, or even prejudices concerning the problem or the issue. These attitude factors will affect the receipt of messages, so messages will have to be designed with these attitude factors in mind. This is very important because the people are flexible towards certain things, but they are also rigid towards certain things. So you need to know their attitude regarding that thing. Knowledge is a separate thing. It is more about the information setup, and attitude is their perception towards that issue. The third factor is the behavior factor. What behavior or behavioral intentions does the target audience exhibit in relation to the problem? Is the current behavior an unsustainable one that the audience might be willing to change if informed or persuaded, or both? If so, what information based on the knowledge factor is needed for presentation, and what type of persuasive campaign would be effective with this particular audience? We have to keep in mind that at the same time as target audience knowledge is assessed, current attitudes and behaviors relating to the problem or issue can also be determined through the same survey or questionnaire or feedback techniques, whichever is used. But most of the time, people tend to look into just the knowledge factor, and they miss out the attitude and behavior factor, which actually results in ineffectiveness of the communication campaign. From here, we'll move towards the sixth step, determining campaign budget. Most communication campaigns will involve the use of funds for various campaign activities. Before communication channels are selected, a budget will need to be determined because different methods of information distribution will entail various costs. Probably the greatest costs of communication campaigns are advertising costs and printing costs, especially if high quality brochures or other such publications are used. If the campaign entails the use of advertising on television or even in newspapers and magazines, the cost of the campaign will have to include advertising costs according to the stations or publications selected for the target audience. Advertising can be an expensive part of a campaign, and therefore it is usually used by organizations with advertising budgets or is sponsored by philanthropic individuals. Campaign organizers should take advantage of free and low-cost efforts when relevant and when possible. For that matter, for example, if the campaign involves events to which the public is invited, then most of the mass media will run public service announcements for free because the events are newsworthy. Many campaigns also involve public events such as concerts, workshops, or even advocacy events such as protests, all of which are newsworthy events worthy of news coverage. So you need to find ways, how do you want the information to be disseminated. Other low-cost strategies involve the distribution of flyers or letters. If a letter writing campaign is used and letters are being sent in bulk to legislators or other government officials, for example, then bulk mailing rates can apply. Regardless of the campaign budget, it is best to know how much money is available for spending in advance of planning campaign activities. Many successful environmental sustainability campaigns that occur at the community level are conducted on low budgets and rely to a great extent on volunteer help. Obviously, whatever a campaign is, it does need financial backing. So you need to know how much financial backing you are having, and you have to plan things accordingly. Once you know the budget, then you move towards selecting the communication channels. See, once the campaign goals and objectives are determined, the audience is analyzed, and the budget is planned, so the next step is to decide the communication channels most appropriate for the target audience. Interpersonal communication channels or mass media communication channels, or a combination of both. Mass media communication channels are usually used in campaigns geared for wide and public audiences, but often campaigns directed to local communities with specifically identified audiences are the most effective in involving citizens in problem solving and planning decisions that affect their everyday life. We all know that interpersonal communication has its own benefits. The community level is perhaps the best place to begin. Actually, all the communities across the globe vary significantly in size, structure, culture. Still, most communities share in common various channels of communication. These channels include some or all of the ones that I'll be mentioning. For example, in interpersonal formats for communication such as face-to-face dialogue, individually or in meetings, letter writing, telephone contact, or internet, email, chat rooms. Similarly, mass-mediated formats for communication such as newspapers, magazines, radio, television, World Wide Web. So the selection of communication channels to be used in a campaign depends on the geographic area and the target audience, plus the budget. Once all this is done, the next step is to test the concepts and preliminary executions on a representative sample of the target audience. Testing will reveal if the target audience understands the concepts and execution, finds them attractive, and can identify with them among other criteria. There should be full debriefing on the test results and not just, yes, the participants liked it, because that does not explain things clearly. There is need to learn what tested well and why. Similarly, what didn't test well and why it didn't. Knowing these details helps manage the process in later stages. After testing, testing the findings should be used to refine the concepts and execution. A follow-up round of testing is recommended to ensure the refinements are on track and that areas that needed to be strengthened are now working. After pre-testing comes the final stage of production. Once the concepts are fully tested and final production begins, for example, for radio or television spots, this requires script writing, casting, taping, and editing. So all these things need to be done according to all the previous planning stuff. And once we are done with the production, then comes the stage of dissemination, and followed by the evaluation, that whatever messages have been produced, be those in written form or written form or audiovisual form, those are disseminated. And usually there is some method in place for evaluation, and it is pre-planned how these will be evaluated against the objectives and the goals with the timeline given. So this is all for communication campaigns. Thank you.